Welcome to Swan Hour, where we speak to people building and shaping businesses, founders, partners, and decision makers, the ones shaping direction and growth. Today, I'm joined by Rudolph Joseph Cavender of the Legal Secretary Proprietary Limited. Rudolph started his career as a legal secretary within South African law firms, working directly with the day to day flow of legal practice, managing documents, coordinating matters, and experiencing firsthand how work actually moves through a firm. Over time, that practical experience evolved into something more. He now works as a facilitator and performance consultant through the Legal Secretary Proprietary Limited, where he focuses on developing legal support staff, improving workflows, and helping firms strengthen their operational performance from within. Rudolph, very lovely to have you today, and thank you for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure, Zara. Absolute pleasure.
Will you tell us a bit about your journey, how you came into the legal environment, and how you ended up focusing on this particular space?
Firstly, thank you for the opportunity. Well, I started out some 23 years ago, where I basically just typed data capturing, but the need for expertise. There was just so much not being done correctly, and it was and still is a female-dominated field. But I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to train. So TLS was officially launched. In December 2020. It's a very novel concept where we train legal secretaries and support staff, but we also offer on-site trainings, something that's very different out there, where we sit with your staff and we iron out any pain points and where we grow together. So it's basically a company created by a legal secretary for legal secretaries.
You've identified the gap in the market in terms of seeing the weakness in businesses, in legal firms, etc., and you've built on that.
Absolutely, yes. It's not just legal. We also focus a bit on corporate as well, because the same structure in terms of soft skills in legal, the exact same structure for corporate in terms of soft skills. The way you draft, the way you answer, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself out. It's got to be professionally done, and that's where TLS comes in.
So, if you would frame it, you'd frame it as a foundational type of, legal secretary services. Effectively, you train for good foundations. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We train for good foundation, but not just train as well for good foundation, but also in terms of carrying that specific business into the next level. A lot of them out there in terms of support staff just want to get so much done, but we at TLS, we push and we drive staff to think outside the box, to stand out, and that's where TLS makes the biggest difference.
Rudolph, let's go right back to the beginning. When you first walked into a legal environment, what did it actually feel like? When you first started in legal administration, cutting edge legal administration, what were you actually responsible for day to day? What did doing the job mean in practice?
Well, firstly, anxiety. But with that anxiety, you got to focus and you got to tell yourself, hey, that I'm here to do my job. And so there was a lot of data capturing, ensuring work was being done properly, efficiently, effectively, proficiently. Clients had to be received, serviced, etc. Bottom line is that I was there to ensure that whatever work had to be done effectively. Because at the end of the day, the company name was at stake. And so I learned how to work in a sense of expertise, not just giving 100%, but giving 200%.
Thank you. That was absolutely insightful. My next question revolves around systems and processes. When you first walked into a legal environment, what systems or processes were you expected to manage? And how would you say this has changed now in terms of evolution of technology? Have systems now become easier or more complicated to manage?
Well, I suppose before it was all about manual filing, etc., simple tracking, and person-to-person dependent systems. But now it's a different story altogether. Digital tools, AI, ChatGPT, Legal Suite, and all these various other types, automated workflows, real-time updates. Systems are much more easier to access now, but harder to manage properly. And without training, they become messy and inefficient. And that's where TLS comes in. With the training, there's focus and efficiency and proficiency.
In my experience, it's fascinating how you have come from the time of dictaphones and fax machines, which very much are likely still around, and you managed to, scale in terms of immersive technology, artificial intelligence, and come up with systems and processes to allow law firms and businesses to function so effectively. It's exposure, not just the structured training, where individuals like yourself build their own version of how things should be done. So it's incredible how you've done it so much more in alignment with how businesses and corporates actually work. But there are individuals that don't actually train themselves in a way that are aligned. with what's supposed to be. What did your learning process look like? And how did you know what you were doing was actually the right thing to do? Has something ever went wrong operationally where you followed your instincts and you missed, a trick? Would you be able to tell us more about that?
Well, a lot of it has been self-taught. It's learning through daily work, pressure, and correcting the various types of mistakes, and watching and observing, which is very important, as well as the fact that I had the capability of reading and upskilling myself and knowing that it was correct, knowing that it was something that was needed. I gained experience by doing, observing, and refining processes over time. But this took years and came with inefficiencies. But through the inefficiencies, I learned, I changed various ways of doing things, of executing duties. They always say that there's only one way to get things done. Absolutely not. I believe there's four different ways. And that's what made me stand out, because I always knew if this didn't work, this had to work. And if this didn't work, this or this had to work. So that's what, and not just trial and error, but the fact that I knew exactly what I was doing as well.
100%. That's very good to hear. And I think that's the trouble with sort of having a non standardization as well in the legal administration field. You sort of are left to your instincts most of the time, and you have to watch and observe. I like that you've said that that's something that was formative in terms of your growth and your learning and development. Inconsistency in cutting edge legal administration can lead up to delays in our transactions and duplicated work, missing information, all of these risks that corporates try to avoid effectively and reduce client confidence. So it's very impactful. It's very impactful the field that you're actually in. Because what isn't standardized early becomes embedded in inefficiency much later. Rudolph, what started to stand out to you, not just in the work, but in how you feel the work was handled?
Personally, individuals never took their job seriously. They never took proprietorship. Never correct. They never were the ones to pick their hands up to say, "Hey, I made a mistake." It was absolutely passing on the buck to the next person. That doesn't show leadership. That doesn't show responsibility. And that actually irked me a bit, in that I gave off my best. If I made a mistake, Rudolph was the one to pick his hand up. And absolutely, so that taught me how to take responsibility, how to focus on leadership qualities, and yet again, that is what made me stand out.
All of those guiding principles that effectively govern efficiency. So all we're saying to people is efficiency is really accidental, it's design.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I suppose in that role, which is such a key role, it's effectively the backbone of any operation. That's where the role itself changes meaning. It stops being support, but it starts becoming the actual engine or part of the engine. Would you agree that there may have been a point you realized the role isn't just about helping, it's actually holding things together?
Well, I suppose there's certain individuals where, because you work around them, you get to know them very well. And then when you know that something not being done correctly, you're going to have to try to correct them. Because in order to get the work output done correctly, you have to let them know, hey, this is not done correctly.
Manage.
Something I learned is that, you can be a good boss, or you can be a great leader. A good boss forces situations. Absolutely, a great leader holds staff's hand and guide them through a situation. And so that's where I've learned again. And I've grown myself to say, hey, let me teach you how to do this thing. Let me show you how to do it correctly. I won't scream at them, because when you scream, they kind of react in a negative sense. So you're out motivational way. And that's what TLS is all about. We motivate and we drive and we literally bring change. And change is there for everyone to see.
And that's an interesting point you've touched on in terms of TLS is here, and the genuine impression or the practical impression would be you're facing towards junior lawyers, or not just in a legal sense, but corporates with support staff, etc., who are the backbones of an operation. What you've just said to me now gives me the impression that you might be suited to directors and to partners and to facilitating great communication with them, between themselves, cohesion between themselves and support staff. Would you say that's a space that you play in at all?
Absolutely. I used to work at one of the biggest firms in Durban and worked very intimately with one of the managing partner. And he relied a lot on me, only because proprietorship, leadership, responsibility. I managed people, I managed the work, I managed time. And that is all very important and very necessary for directors, because directors are looking for individuals, support staff, PAs, legal secretaries that can be their backbone. And that's very important. And that brings a lot into the TLS program as well. With that background, and exactly what directors are looking for in their staff.
Coming from the perspective that you would nurture a director's journey, just in terms of providing that support and also giving them the ability to carve out their own path with your support. So, when did it click to you, Rudolph, that the role requires judgment and an ability to sort of navigate your boss and sort of manage them without obviously overstepping or any boundaries?
Very simple, very early on. Everything that leaves your desk, for example, had your name on it. I had to train myself to lead people, manage people, because a lot of times people kept fobbing work off. People kept blaming. There was this blame game. Emotions were high. Sometimes with seniors, not all the time, but sometimes with seniors. They are human after all. So just like with the juniors, junior support staff, junior professionals, etc., they all were very, can I say, irrational at times. So it was up to me to basically tell him, hey guys, let's focus, let's work together. I'm here with all this years experience. Let me guide you, and then that is how we work together. We work in sync. And when you work in sync, suddenly people start to realize, okay, this is what we need to get done. Rudolph is teaching us the right way, even though he may not be an attorney, but he is the best and expert at what he does. That's managing people, managing work, leading, knowing when the next step is going to be coming and what you need to do to be ahead of the game.
And trusting in your lead in terms of your experience, in terms of your familiarization with your cutting edge legal administration, and I suppose if you're running a business, that's the shift when you start to see that layer's infrastructure and you invest in that infrastructure, not just admin, and your approach changes completely. And these are high pressured environments. So I agree with the point that, sometimes people can be irrational. Juniors may not be able to think or focus as they should. So it's incredible that your sort of mindset is to sort of ground them in the thinking and in the focus and the concentration, and being the backbone for obviously your seniors or your directors or your principals, and making sure that you have that empathy for them and you understand on a daily basis how much they actually have to manage, whether it's management or whether it's operators in terms of business unit operators or attorneys. They do need that support. And it's more than just admin, it's compassion, notifying them that there's something that they need to attend to, maybe from a personal point. Someone has those soft skills that you do mention. It really does show, and it forms them in terms of being a better employee. So it's incredible that TLS acknowledges all of these requirements that may not be communicated to staff when you're starting a new job, for example. Let's talk about diagnosis. This is where experience really shows. Now, I understand you run an operation where performance management is a focal point. When you walk into a new business or a new law firm now, what do you pick up on almost immediately? What tells you that this is going to run smoothly or it's going to be slightly more difficult? And in terms of issues, what do you see is the most common issue in terms of how work might be presented, in terms of early indicators that a team might struggle with something?
Okay, so initially when I do enter into any specific company, first thing I notice are people. Second thing I notice are the editors. The third thing I notice is, are they willing to learn? Do they want to learn? Are they giving everything? Are they excited? Or is it just something like, Chalice is here, it's our day off? And so that's where I kind of gauge. And then if I do notice that people are probably here just to play around, I actually get a bit more proactive and more stern, in the sense that I am here to teach you. I'm here to make your life better. I'm here to make you grow so that you can grow. Your expertise can be enlarged, so to speak. And some of them come with a subpar attitude. Everybody wants to give 80%. Nobody wants to give 200%. It's the one that give 200% that literally stand out. And I've got to tell you that when the team is not in sync with each other, the goals of that department or the firm is never ever going to be achieved. And that's where TLS comes in, and we focus. When we get a team or many teams to focus on that specific goal for the day, for the hour, for the month, for the week, for the year. And we kind of just grow. I show people how to go about managing their time, managing their work, managing their mindset, managing the way they think and the way they respond.
Is there a moment when it's damage control, or is it just preparatory or proactive sort of management in terms of performances?
I suppose it's a bit of both. Directors, HR managers say that, there's only so much that they can do, and that's when they need outside help. for assistance, and knowing that TLS, we are focused on people and soft skills and the mentality of this specific individual. We know how to go about working with these individuals and motivating them and letting them say, hey, what you're doing may not be correct. What you're doing may actually be stalling your progress. And we kind of let them realize, hey, you know what, actually, Rudolph and Cheers are actually make a lot of sense. I think I need to buck up a bit here. And so it's us holding their hands and teaching them and guiding them and making them become better. And that's when they realize, hey, I've got to buck up, pull up my socks, work a little bit harder because the benefits are there. You work harder, you achieve much more.
And that's key for any business, because it's the question, are you building capability up front or are you correcting it later at a cost?
Correct.
Performance to an extent depends on clarity. People can't meet a standard if that's not defined. As we know, globally, labor legislation and employment legislation stipulates that expectations need to be communicated to staff, whether in writing. It's always better in writing, of course, especially in the industry we're in. But sometimes verbal communications are done. And when everything is working well, what does that look like from your perspective?
What I generally do is I always kind of get them to understand that I'm there to help them. I'm not there to instruct them. I'm not there to push them. I'm there to hold a hand and to guide them from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And that's when they realize, hey, Rudolph may be a bit stern at times, and he may be verbalizing what he's thinking and not just putting it out manuscriptly. It's because at that moment, he wants me to grow. At that moment, he sees that I am actually holding back from my potential. And that's very important. And so TLS really focuses a lot on upskilling people, not just work-wise, but emotionally, psychologically as well, and the way they carry themselves out, which is very, very, very important. I always believe in giving the 200% principle. Don't tell me about 80% principle. 90% of the world work staff work at the 80% principle. They just want to do just enough. But I push people to say, be a workaholic. I know people are probably going to say, why workaholic? No, but be a workaholic. When you're at work, work. When you're at work, do not sit on your phone. When you're at work, do not talk to people. When you're at work, do not look at the stars. Focus on work. Give off your best. You're going to stand out. And that's when people realize, okay, wow, great. This is actually making sense. This is going to benefit me. Thank you, Rudolph. Thank you, TLS.
And if you have distractions and you're not focused, you're affecting your capacity. You're not going to be able to take on what you should, let alone more. And often, in terms of performance, it's a debatable question. Is it consistency or is it skill? And I suppose that differs in the context. What would you settle on? Would you say performance comes down to consistency or does it come down to person's skill?
Well, basically, let me put it this way. You upskill yourself by training, right? But you also got to be consistent. You've got to be consistent after what you've been trained on. And that means that you got to keep actioning what you've learned. You just cannot sit and say, hey, I've learned this for this past week. Let me just action it and going forward, forget about it. No, that's not what it's.
It's a combination of consistency and skill then leads to performance. Coming to performance in terms of being a high performer, would TLS be able to give us right now a toolkit of a high? What would be the steps and a toolkit for someone who wishes to be a high performer to be able to produce a good piece of work?
I teach on quite a bit. Focus on your GPS principle. Just like our vehicle has a GPS system to keep you on the true north, which means getting you in the right direction. With TLS, we focus on GPS as well, which is you focus on, especially with drafting, you focus on your G is for grammar, P is for punctuation, S is for spelling, but silently as well, there's also formatting and spacing. You focus on those things, those specific values in terms of drafting. You are A for away. Your drafting skills, it'll basically show that your drafting will stand out. Your principal will start to notice. Your fellow peers will start to notice. And everything that you do has to be done to the best of your ability. Because remember, everything that leaves your desk has your name on it, your name stamp. If there's any error, any inquiry, any query, they're going to be coming to look for Zara. They're going to be coming to look for Delph. Give off your best. Everything that leaves your desk, be 300 to 200%.
That is absolutely valuable, especially in the landscape that we have high pressure environments. You need everyone to be intentional, and that is great practical advice as well for someone of any level in their trajectory. Thank you, Rudolph. Speaking Speaking of high pressured environments, effectively, when you're working in a firm or a business, this is where return on investment can be lost. This is where most firms or businesses feel it, not in the strategy, but in workload. When things aren't working, you generally see the strain within a team and within the finished products. You find delays, bottlenecks, etc. People often say they're overwhelmed. Would you say it's really about volume or how it's managed? And what would you say is the main reason people lose control of their workload?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you something that's very important that most people do not take to heart, and they should be taking to heart. The first thing that you should be focusing on is breathing and how your breathing moves like a train because you speak overthink because there's just so much happening. It's all about volume. But always remember something. You've got 8 hours in a day. Break those 8 hours into 1 to 8 1 hour capsules. So within the first 1 hour to 2 hours of the day, 2 1 hour capsules, do your highest priority or execute your highest priority work first. Anything that's left over from yesterday, do it first. Any admin you need to do it first. That's how you're going to win. Stop overthinking and start managing your time. And that's very important.
From a return on investment perspective, that is absolutely valuable. And where would you then say the biggest loss of time happens in most teams?
There's no discussion prior to executing a major project within the team. Everyone wants to do their own thing and not sit down and discuss, and get the one answer on the page, so to speak, where everyone agrees.
If you take then those 5 or 10 minutes just to put down a method statement, you would sort of reduce the time loss later on where someone comes to you and asks queries, especially if you're in a position where you're management or you're a director and you're always busy between commitments and engagement. I suppose work moves through people, communication, alignment. What is the best way to handle unclear instructions?
I think there's a rule that I live by and that I let everyone know. Every day, have a pen and have a page or writing pad next to your laptop. Write down absolutely everything that you need to do. And when you write it down in your mind, you are in a sense of, wow, I've got so much to do today. Then you start to manage your time in your head. Okay, this is going to take me 30 minutes at least. I would gather 1 hour, 15 minutes, etc. Once you strike off what you've done, psychologically, it's a form of success. And that starts to build up confidence in you to say, hey, I've done so much in today, tomorrow, bring it on, bring it on. So bottom line is as well, when you write down everything, you get to see how much of work you've done for the day and how productive you've been.
Effectively, when they're doing their own note keeping, when they're keeping themselves to high standards, that's where a form of leadership would come in. You'd see a glimmer of it, whether they're junior, whether they're senior. Or do you think businesses tend to address performances early or only once it becomes a problem? How do you work with the HR teams in resolving these types of issues?
A lot of HR have situations or problems because they do not iron out the situation or the problems initially. They seem to just say, okay, fine, let's just give this person another week, another 2 weeks. But the person does not learn. The person does not want to grow. The person exacerbates the situation that they're already in. So it's very important to have kind of set up in terms of, hey, we understand that you have not been doing certain things correctly. We need for you to buck up. We need for you to realize that what you may be doing may be detrimental to the firm. Take the steps needed to grow. Not only is the company going to suffer, but you as well. You are going to be without a job. Your family is not going to be able to have a meal, which is very important. The reality is a game changer. And let's start to realize, hey, okay, fine, it makes sense. I need to up my game. HR need to enforce that initially. Say, if you cannot back up, if you're not willing to change, so be it.
There's a new term now for HR where they say human asset capital. I love mentioning this when I speak to leaders of businesses because that is effectively the strength of an organization. And that's
Or
the
people manager.
infrastructure you need to
Yeah,
invest in. People manager.
absolutely.
If you were speaking directly to a law firm owner or a business owner, what should they understand about this part of their business?
Firstly, your staff members are human. Your staff members come to work with problems. Your staff members want you to give off their best, and they are giving off their best. And at times, the staff members seem to think that the effort that they are putting in is somehow not being noticed. It's good to say, well done, etc. Great. But sometimes in this day and age, I think certain benefits work in terms of monetary, maybe tickets to a movie, day out with your family, paid, etc. All these small things actually help in instilling confidence in staff members, where staff members say, hey, my boss has done this for me. I am willing to go this far and much more for them. It's a quid pro quo, which most of the world needs to understand. In order to get a
Yes.
successful business,
You have to
you need to have
invest in your
successful people.
people. Thank you. That has been incredibly impactful and meaningful for us. What the business feels versus what it sees. On paper, things are fine, matters are progressing. Underneath that, there's often a different experience. That gap is where inefficiency sits. And it's incredible to know that TLS is now here to be able to bridge that gap. So thank you. It's been really insightful that you avoid the compounding effect and you help us just bridge the gap. Thank you again, Rudolph, and it's been a pleasure speaking to you. We'll be in touch and we'll chat soon. Bye bye.